Great. Okay. So I want to welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Super exciting. We're here with Next Life Sciences, the creators of Plan A. My name is Ahmed. I'm a fellow here at Transform VC. Transform VC invests in founders looking to create an environmental or social impact through the use of deep tech and AI. And a great example of that being Next Life Sciences. We also want to remind everyone today that this is the fifth webinar in our series that's leading up to our Impact a Billion Summit in San Francisco on October 24th. So we do encourage everyone here, if you'd like to request an invite, please do so at impactabillion.com. You'll also see that information in the chat, and I'll remind you later on. So as we get started, I want to give a brief introduction on Next Life Sciences and Plan A. Next Life Sciences is a pioneering company in the reproductive health, developing innovative non-hormonal solutions like Plan A. Plan A is a revolutionary non-hormonal male contraceptive designed to be long-lasting and fully reversible, offering men a real alternative to condoms or vasectomy. With over 50% of pregnancies worldwide unplanned and nearly 45 million women suffering side effects of hormonal birth control, Plan A could transform how we think about reproductive responsibility. We're thrilled today to be joined by Dr. Darlene Walley, CEO of Next Life Sciences. With over 3 decades of leadership at companies like Procter & Gamble and Arm & Hammer, she's now leading the charge of one of the most ambitious advancements in men's reproductive health, Plan A. Welcome, Darlene.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah. So before we dive deeper into today's agenda, I'd like to pick your brain, Darlene, and ask you, what was the problem that Plan A was trying to solve, and what inspired you to join the team?
Yeah, great question. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I see some familiar people, and I want to really thank Transform VC for not only being an early supporter of Next Life Sciences, but for giving us this wonderful venue to talk about Plan A. And please ask questions. We want this to be really interactive with you. As Ahmed said, my background is over 30 years of innovations in medicine. And when I heard about Plan A, when I heard about Next Life Sciences, I had to be part of it. This company is really going to change reproductive health. And that's our mission at Next Life Sciences. We're a reproductive and sexual health platform. Plan A happens to be our flagship product that we talk about. It's very exciting. We do have other products that I'd love to talk to you about in the future that are equally exciting, but Plan A is really targeting that number. 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. That's unheard of. Thinking of 1 out of 2 pregnancies are unplanned. And we know that directly leads to poverty, to both maternal as well as infant death. It leads to a lot of mental illness and other repercussions. So Plan A is directly targeting that number to really make a big dent in that 50%. If you think about it, then the most recent revolution in reproductive health was over 50 years ago, the pill. And when I think about Plan A is going to be that big of a revolution. Plan A is going to be the same thing as in the 60s when we saw women dancing in the street, burning their bras, etc. This is giving men an option. It's giving men a chance to participate in family planning as well as their own reproductive autonomy. So Plan A is really going to revolutionize the way we think about reproductive health.
I love it, Darlene. Yeah, I think amazing. I think there's so many different facets to how this impacts our world. And we can get really into all those in a moment. I think for our guests today, we want to walk you through today's agenda. Really, it's going to be a deep dive into Plan A. Darlene will help us walk through the technology, how it works. We'll have a fireside chat with Darlene, and we will have an audience Q&A to close out the session for the last 5 to 10 minutes as well. So we do encourage you to ask questions. And a reminder, this is an interactive session. Keep your questions, drop them in the chat, and you will have a chance to talk through them. Hopefully you learn a lot today, and hopefully you can, take the messages you learned today and pass them on to someone else as well. So Darlene, I think the first thing we want to do today is really kind of walk through the technology. Can you walk us through how Plan A works and what makes it both reversible and long-lasting without hormones?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. A little bit of background. So Plan A is as most of you know, pretty recent, but 30 years ago, there was a professor in India who had this idea of a male contraceptive. Unfortunately, at that time, the science and medicine wasn't quite where it is today. So they didn't really understand the mechanism of how it was working, or they weren't able to also take it out of the laboratory. So it really languished quite a bit. Some of you may have heard of it. It was called RISUG, RISUG. But that really was a foundation of what we're doing today. And fortunately, Professor Guha had put this product in hundreds of men. So we have data showing that over 10 years that men safely and effectively had our contraceptive in their bodies. So that's outstanding. That's a great foundation to have. And if many of you think that all these medical innovations like GLP-1s or even Botox, something as simple as Botox are, 10 years maybe of research, all these breakthroughs take 30 years plus to actually make it to the market. And that's where we are today. We're really at Next Life Sciences focused on going forward, getting this product to the market, because a lot of people ask us, why is it taking so long? Why can't we have it now? As all the men, and I saw someone in the chat asking to be in a clinical trial, a lot of men want this product now, and they're willing to be in our clinical trials to kind of jump ahead of the line, if you will. But I bet all of you are wondering now, how does it work? And that's a great question that Ahmed asked as well. So I have a short video that I will talk alongside of, and it really takes us through how, Plan A works in a man.
Yeah, so I think we'll get a little short demo up. Same way, there we go.
There we go. Yeah. So Plan A is an implant. It's inserted into the vas deferens. The vas deferens is a very tiny tube that carries sperm into the man's body. So that tiny tube, it's about the size of spaghetti, is isolated in a very simple procedure in a doctor's office, could be a future, but the vas deferens is isolated. And then we have a proprietary device that does that very accurately for the doctor to make sure they're inside the vas deferens, causing no damage. We then put our proprietary hydrogel called Vasogel. It's a polymer solution that goes into the vas deferens, just a couple drops. All of a sudden, that polymer solution, the solvent is exchanged with water that's inside the body, and it gels. It forms what's called a hydrogel. Hydrogels are very compatible with the body. The body sees it as themselves, and it doesn't reject it. And that hydrogel acts as a filter. So the hydrogel has certain size holes inside of it that will allow fluids to pass, but not sperm. So we really serve as a filter for sperm. So sperm can safely swim up to it, swim right back. We've done a lot of studies showing that there's absolutely no damage to sperm, which is very important. And you could see in the demo, the sperm swim up to it. They can't fit through. The head of the sperm is about 2.5 to 3.5 microns, and our largest hole is 1 micron. And now the really fascinating part is to reverse it. So that thick hydrogel with a little bit of sodium bicarbonate solution, about a teaspoon, will dissolve. It turns into a water-like material, easily removed through the body. So then the sperm can go through happily ever after, and the man becomes fertile. Any questions about how Plan A works?
Yeah, it's amazing, Darlene. I think that's great walkthrough. I think super clear. Maybe for those who aren't familiar with options in the space, what are the other options today, right? We talk about things like vasectomy. What's the difference there?
Yeah, right now men have 2 options. They have condoms, which are not very reliable. If they're used, and we know they're not used all the time, they still have a failure rate of about 20%. Then you have vasectomies at the other end. Vasectomies are rather permanent. They might be reversed, maybe a 50% chance of successfully reversing them. It's a 3-hour microsurgery plus, and it could be over $10,000 to have your vasectomy reversed. So those are the 2 options that exist right now. And men really want something else. In fact, the Gates Foundation did a survey a couple of years ago of men 18 to 49, and over 80% of men in that survey said they want something else. And that's what Plan A is. We're giving men another option. And the fascinating thing about vasectomies, 1/3 of the men who call in to make an appointment don't actually show up. And when I tell this to people, there's always a couple people that raise their hand and say, yep, I did that, because it is a very permanent decision. So the nice on the demo is Plan A is very easily reversed. So this gives men the option, if they change their mind, if they want to wait several years to have children, to really easily reverse the procedure.
Yeah, I think a question I had when I learned about this was, I think you showed it, which was basically the gel acts as a filter for fluid versus sperm. So what happens? So the sperm, I think one of our guests asked a question around what happens to the sperm. Does it result in any type of pain or inflammation of any type? Where does it go?
Yeah, so sperm are very naturally absorbed in the body. The body sees it as a white blood cell, and there are macrophages that take care of it. But you touched on a very important question, Ahmed, and that is that with a vasectomy, because it's a blunt finish, fluid cannot go through. With our product, fluid goes through with Plan A. So urologist pointed out to us early on that men usually get this little painful pressure after a vasectomy, and it resolves in usually a couple of weeks, but in 5% of men, it never resolved. It's very debilitating. So urologists are saying, this is great. We will not have to, deal with that issue, because they don't like not being able to solve problems for their patients.
Amazing. I think that we're all super excited about the technology. Can you walk us through, kind of from a development perspective, where are you at? What milestones have you hit, and you're proud of to date for our guests today?
Yeah, we are so excited. We've crossed the line into the clinical phase. So that's a big milestone for a company. It's almost like going into adolescence, if you will. So we have a lot of preclinical data, a lot of data in every species of animals you could think of, from rats to rabbits to rhesus monkeys to apes. We have a lot of great laboratory data where we simulate everything, but now we're in human clinical trials. And we've met with the FDA already. We have a clinical program last year that they approved. And we're a medical device, so much easier clinical pathway, smaller numbers of people, because our product isn't invasive. We're not changing the body. We're not a drug that's going systemically, so you have to look through all the, those of you familiar with drug development, PK, et cetera, to show safety. So we've already started the early feasibility trials. That's our first set of clinical trials. And many of you who've been on board know that we did a very positive clinical trial in Canada and Australia. So those were 100% successful. They were on our device. And as I said, it's really important that we're able to inject our polymer into the vas deferens. It's the size of spaghetti. It's not a big tube. And so if the doctor goes through the vas deferens, that's not good. Goes alongside of it, won't be effective. So we had 100% success using doctors who were very new to doctors who had done like 40,000 vasectomies. So we were really pleased that on 2 continents, we had 100% success with our first clinical trial. Now we're moving on to the human clinical trials. We just made an FDA submission. We'll be doing the US clinical trials, and then we move into what's called feasibility. So that is a mini pivotal trial, if you will. We look at getting men to show that they have no more sperm being produced, and then we reverse them kind of quickly. So that's our feasibility trials later this year. And then next year is our pivotal trial. That's the last trial. That's 100 to 200 men, and it goes out for a whole year, because to make a long-lasting claim, it's required to go out longer than 1 year. So we'll take all the men through to get them occluded so they no longer produce sperm. And then a subset will do a reversal and show that their fertility comes back to baseline. So that's where we are today.
Awesome. I think we also had and I think Brock had a question about this being a medical device versus a pharmaceutical. That's all right. Maybe you can talk through that a bit.
Yeah, so a medical device is very different than a drug. We have a different division in the FDA. Our division hasn't been affected by any layoffs, knock on wood, or any changes yet. But we do have, if that were to happen, we do have great clinical sites, and we've gone through the regulatory process in Australia and Canada as well. But a drug has to go through a lot of human safety trials, because a drug, if you think of it, it's affecting the whole body. We call it systemically, which means that every organ in your body is susceptible to what that drug is doing. We are an inert medical device. So that hydrogel goes in the body. It doesn't change the body. All it acts, as Ahmed said, was as a filter. It's just there as a filter. It doesn't change the vas deferens, doesn't do anything. The body's happy with it inside, doesn't get rejected. So that's why our clinical pathway is different than a drug clinical pathway. A new drug could take up to 10 years. Typically, a medical device like ours could take less than 3 years.
Maybe it's amazing. Shaden asked a question. She's getting to the real numbers here. How much has been raised so far, and then what valuation?
Yeah, great question. So again, talking a little bit about the company, our founder, many of you have met, Fox, L.R. Fox, he goes by the name Fox. He has a family office and he incubates companies, and Next Life Science is a company that he incubated, and he put his own money in to start the company. We've raised through a series of seed rounds over $10 million so far. We have a safe that's still open that I'd be glad to talk to anybody that's interested about. We also have a Series A that we've begun. We have some people in due diligence. We're looking for the right lead investor for Series A. Series A is a $20 million round that will take us through all the clinical trials for Plan A up until our FDA submission in 2027.
Thanks, Darlene. So let's kind of get back to really the impact of the technology, right? Technology has such a huge impact on really so many problems that we have in our communities and worldwide. 50% of pregnancies today are unplanned. What role can male contraceptive play in changing that narrative?
Yeah, so it's really staggering to think that for all this time, birth control has been the responsibility of women. And we know now that hormonal birth controls have a lot of effects on a woman's body. As they're taking it, then they have higher risks of heart disease, different types of cancer later on. It also affects their fertility. We're seeing data that 1 out of 3 women that are taking hormonal birth control are also experiencing fertility issues later on. There may be a direct link between the two of those. So women have borne the burden of birth control. With Plan A, that's going to be a major change. That's a movement where men now can participate. We see a lot of couples where the man is looking at his loved one saying, I don't like what's happening to her. I don't like, mentally she's not the same, physically she's not the same, and I feel helpless. So this is giving men a tool so they could participate in family planning alongside their spouse or loved one.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that you've had a huge amount of traction from men so far. Over 50,000, I believe, have already joined your wait list. What does that signal to you about demand and how men are thinking about this technology?
Yeah, men are very interested in this. That's a great statistic. We actually, because of this webinar, have actually put a small statement in on our website that allow men to specifically look for signing up for clinical trials because we are getting in that phase. But it's been really gratifying to me to speak to young men in our demographic who are so interested right away. They want to do this. They see it as a great option because it's so easily reversed and because it's so inert in their body. So this is something that, we have men every day coming into our website, giving us, just compelling stories of their situation and why this is so important. And as I said earlier, so many men want to be in our clinical trials. Unfortunately, our clinical trials are pretty small. So only a small subset of those men could be enrolled. We still will go through all the clinical parameters that the FDA set out, but they will be eligible if they meet the criteria of our clinical trials to participate. But that's why we're all so anxious to get this product commercialized.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think there's an element here that you touched on, which is around really, both having men and women participate in contraceptive overall, right? So beyond, her responsibility, how do you feel, that's the concept that we have in our society today. That's all kind of on her. She has to figure it out. It's often something taboo. The woman feels almost a sense of, like a huge weight on her shoulders, right? To be responsible for taking care of that aspect of birth control, right? When you're ready, responsibly, et cetera. You mentioned the shift in mindset. And then how does Plan A start that conversation? How does Plan A begin that conversation for men overall?
Yeah, it's going to be a great change. And as I said earlier, it's a movement. where, so far contraception and the whole discussion of birth control hasn't been something that men have talked about. Doctors don't necessarily talk to their patients, young men or young women are talked to about birth control and ask questions. So there's a whole movement and a whole change of mindset. And I think right now is the right time for Plan A. There's a lot of social factors. There's a lot of evolution in the science, quite frankly, is there to show how effective and how safe this product could be. So we're really excited that we're on the cusp of all those different factors coming together to make this the right time for Plan A. We see Plan A as a global product. The US is ideally our first and largest market, but this will be a product for everywhere, including places, in remote areas that where, unplanned pregnancy has a huge effect on their society. We see this going out, people that will be in mobile units to train, doctors and train medical personnel to do this in remote areas that don't normally have the capacity to see a physician.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's the impact of technology, right? It's not only having it in the hands of the few, it's the many. And I think the demand is there, right? You mentioned 50,000 people are signing up. People are dying to be a part of the clinical trial. Once this technology is approved, once Plan A is approved, how are you thinking about it getting into people's hands? Is it the clinic model? Is it a direct to consumer model? What's that like?
Yeah, the model will be similar to all of you have witnessed Ozempic, Keytruda, and even Botox I mentioned earlier. So products like ours have a consumer element where you're educating and informing the consumer, although I think they already know about Plan A. I don't think it's been a secret. And then the medical community, we need to have, because this is a procedure, a very simple procedure in a doctor's office, we want to make sure doctors are trained and educated. So we have a dual approach for this. I've done this many times before with many products, so it's not, brand new. This is, something that we have already started planning, because the time to plan commercialization is not when you get FDA approval, it's 2 years before, to put all the elements in place and then, do a really fabulous job on commercialization. We plan to have on our website a locator for doctors in your area that have been trained. So if a man hears about Plan A, he can go on our website and right away know which doctor, or, if his doctor that he would like to go to isn't on the list, let him know, let us know, and we'll do training.
Yeah, I love it. I think you're right. I think that, like you said, people are out there really advocating for themselves and looking out for this technology. So it sounds like it can come from both sides. It can come from the doctor, or it can come from me learning about it from your site or from other physicians as well, right? I think you come from really, maybe we should touch on this, Darlene, is you do come from global organizations like Procter and Gamble, and now you're at Next Life Sciences. We know why you joined the mission, but why now? We know why you joined this company, but why right now?
No, it's a great question that, some like myself, I've spent, my whole career in life sciences, starting out, like you said, in very large companies and then doing several startups with very successful exits. I've had, 5 exits to major drug companies, raised hundreds of millions of dollars. But when a person like me with this background, with an experience, would see an opportunity to really change and have an impact on society, a very positive impact, it just pulls you towards it. It's just a great opportunity for me to use all that skill and all that experience to really change people's lives for the better.
So on that note, I think what's your long-term vision for Next Life Sciences beyond Plan A? How do you see the future of male contraceptive evolving under your leadership and with the company?
Yeah, no, great question. So as I mentioned, we're a reproductive health platform. I have to take a drink. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. So we're a reproductive health platform. We have other products we're developing equally important to Plan A. They're all addressing big unmet needs in reproductive and sexual health for both men and women.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I'm sorry, I know you're going over your cold, so if you want to take a moment to take a sip. I think if you imagine a future where Plan A is widely adopted, what does that world look like? What ripple effects do you think it can have on healthcare and policy and everyday relationships? I think we imagine things, today you think about like everyone just thinks of like a condom, that's what you think of, and you think of really or a birth control pill. So what do you think of, right? What are the ripple effects that we can see in the world with
I
Plan
think,
A?
yeah, I think just like with the pill, how liberating that was for people back in the 60s, Plan A will do the same thing for men. So I think years from now, our children or grandchildren will look back and say, why were you guys pumping women with hormones? Why weren't you smart enough to think of Plan A sooner? So I think the world, in the future will be, have better options for both men and women. But Plan A really fills a huge void right now. We're finding more and more women, it's underreported, but at least 20% of women can tolerate hormonal birth control. So that's a huge segment that's struggling, and not using birth control is what results in that 50% number that we mentioned. So Plan A really fills a void in the marketplace that has been really underserved. And it's hard to imagine why we haven't had this innovation. A lot of people ask me about that. Reproductive health affects all of us. We have very little investment dollars, very little research goes into this area. And that's why Next Life Sciences chose this area. It's an area of great need, and it's an area that affects all of our lives.
No, absolutely. I think that maybe the last thing we want to kind of touch on is really this idea of I think you mentioned it, which is it's fertility, right? So contraception is one part, which is planning your fertility cycle. But really, how does this impact fertility overall, right? Like when I am ready when we are ready to have children, or people are trying to actively do that, what's the impact of Plan A? How does that impact that cycle, that mentality and mindset?
Yeah, we know that the people, especially in our country, but all over the world, are waiting longer to have children. So for women, that means probably freezing your eggs because you only have a limited number of eggs. For men, something like Plan A is very safe because we're not affecting sperm. We've done extensive studies to show that nothing about men's fertility will be affected by using Plan A. So that's really important, that when a couple decides it's time to have children, they could go forward very safely and effectively. So I think that's really we really fit the new narrative of fertility, where we are very pro baby, pro, procreation, but at the right time. We're saying when you're ready, when it's right for you, whether it's a financial decision, a career decision, finding the right person, we're just offering that option to allow you to make that decision at the right time, not have it unexpected.
Yeah, I love it. I think I think we touched on this, and maybe you can add a bit more detail around fundraising and if you're looking for funding.
Yeah, right now we're in the midst of Series A. That's our price round right now. We have lead investors in due diligence, and that's a $20 million round that we're raising. We still have a safe that's open. If anyone prefers that, please reach out to me in either case. Be glad to talk to you.
Yeah, great. I got a lot of my questions out. I want to have the audience and our guests here be able to participate and ask questions. I
And then,
will open it up now, so I'll give you all a few minutes to kind of gather your questions and submit them. In the meantime, I think Ali's asked a follow-up question on your fundraising question around SAFE versus Series A. What's the difference in participating in those?
so a safe is for those of you who haven't, used the safe before. So that's a note that converts into Series A when Series A is raised. So those are a series of different options that those investors will convert into our Series A round as soon as Series A is priced and confirmed. And I did see a question about Contraline's Atom. And so I could talk a little bit about the competitive landscape.
Mhm.
So male contraceptives are a real big focus of a lot of people in research as well as regulatory bodies right now. There's a male contraceptive workshop that we're part of. We have a grant just for male contraceptives that we've been awarded, a 2-year grant. And there are other companies developing different options. And we think this is great. We think the whole category of male contraception will be growing, both in awareness and products. So there are a couple of products being developed right now. There's one that's a a cream that men can use. That's a hormonal product. There's another one that's a pill. It affects the production of sperm. There's a product that somebody asked about, Contraline. Contraline's product lasts 1 to 2 years, according to their information, and it self-dissolves. So a man would have to have it reinserted every, period. We feel we have the best option. Ours is non-hormonal. It lasts, over 10 years, and it could be easily reversed when you want it. So you don't have to wait for it to self-dissolve. We can go in and have the doctor reverse it on demand, as we say. So that's the competitive landscape right now.
Amazing. Thanks, Darlene. I think we actually do have a bunch of questions in, so let's start jumping through them. One question we got was, what happens to the sperm when it stays inside? Where does it go?
Yeah, the sperm is very easily absorbed in the body. Many who have vasectomies have been having that for years. It's very safe. Sperm are seen as white blood cells, and there are other organisms called macrophages, and they absorb the white blood cell. So it's a very well-known, safe process.
I think everyone's gonna ask a question, which is, this is amazing. Everything has side effects. What's the side effects of this technology?
That's a great question. That, the only side effect would be, when we insert into the vas deferens, there might be some soreness, very, very mild, much milder than when someone has a vasectomy, because that's a lot more invasive. When you have a vasectomy, the vas deferens is actually cut or cauterized and then sewn and then put back into place. For ours, we're just inserting something into the vas deferens. So that's what we expect, something very mild, nothing that will require a prescription drug, et cetera, but just, very mild. And I should mention that a topical anesthetic is used. So imagine having your blood drawn with a topical anesthetic. Your blood being drawn is very similar to the vas deferens, which is right below the skin surface, but the doctor would use a topical anesthetic. Most of them in the US use an air jet. So it's not even a needle.
And maybe if you don't mind, maybe going into the procedure, then you just mentioned a needle. So what is the procedure? How long does it take? What is the cost of it usually?
Yeah. No, the procedure is very, very fast. So the doctor will isolate the vas deferens, which is right in the scrotum, right below the skin. He pulls it out. He doesn't use a scalpel or needles in this procedure at all. He makes a tiny opening, and then our device inserts our polymer solution. It forms a hydrogel, and it closes. You don't need a stitch or anything. So very simple. It's about 5 minutes per side. Men have 2 vas deferens, one on each side, and that's all it takes.
Really cool. I think I'm going through a lot of these questions. Also, I do want to encourage everyone. The questions can be asked anonymously as well. So, there's no taboo questions today. Darlene's going to answer all the questions that you have. So thank you so much for all those who are submitting questions in the Q&A and in the chat. Another question that came up is really around in the production of the gel. Can you speak to what could be limitations in scaling during trials or upon approval? Is there any type of limitation to the hydrogel and producing it and scaling it, et cetera?
No, it's a great question. So right now we're in the midst of scaling up. We've already started the process. So our first step is to make clinical trial supplies. And it's really important, unlike the work that was done in India, ours are going to be done in manufacturing facilities that are regulated and inspected by the FDA. So both the device that I mentioned, as well as the polymer solution, all those are made under what's called GMP. The scale up to the next level to commercialization is already something we're working on. We want to make sure that we have millions ready, for when this hits the market. Right now, we're making clinical trial supplies, but the next step up is in the millions of units.
Yeah, great question. A question came up as well around, what is your current best thinking around marketing plan to reach the target market?
Yeah, so it's, our target market, our main demographic are 18 to 49-year-olds. And we know media-wise, as far as, the best way to reach those men. We've been having discussions with them. We have market research. We have actually Planned Parenthood as a partner with us to really reach that demographic. And so we've done a lot of work, and we continue to do a lot of work to get the messaging that works really effectively with that demographic. And then on the medical side, That's something we've already started attending all the major medical conventions and working with our advisory board. We're really fortunate. We have all the leaders in neurology worldwide on our advisory board. I should also mention a shout out to my team. I think I might have a couple team members here on the webinar, but I have an outstanding team, very experienced with medical devices, clinical trials, with reproductive health products. We have some of the leading companies that have been very successful in this field, all of us working in a team together. And that's what, we believe that's important to get the product to the market. We also know investors look at that too. We have an incredible founder, and that's, very important. But then we have a team in place that can really get the product to the market because we've done it many times already.
I think that's something interesting. You mentioned two things I would love for you to kind of hone in on a bit more. One is that Planned Parenthood side. I think you mentioned, right, most people think about a vasectomy or a lot of this stuff as like something you get 40 plus. I think there's a use case here which is in that younger range, right, the 18, the 30 to 40 range. So I'd love for you to talk about that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point about vasectomies. We don't think of ourselves as vasectomy 2.0. We're not replacing vasectomies, but a lot of young men in their 20s are having vasectomies. So that's in our demographic. So we really want another option for them. And as you said, people like Planned Parenthood, they contacted us. I was very pleased, but they're really evolving and thinking about the future, in this country. And they know male contraceptives are in the future. So they want us to be featured in all their materials that they're putting out to their constituents. We're actually doing some clinical trials with them as well. So they've been a great partner.
Amazing. I think another question is more technical. So something cool that I learned from you, Darlene, and also, that I learned in our discussions is really that Plan A is a single product. Both the aspect of inserting the gel as well as dissolving the gel is all considered one. I think we understand the insertion part. In terms of the dissolving part, can you talk more about that? What happens to the gel once it's dissolved? Does it, where does that gel go, essentially? I think Sasha asked that. Great question, Sasha.
Yeah, great question. So back to how we dissolve it. So we use a solution of 8.4% sodium bicarbonate. That solution is already being used by urologists in the urinary tract, cardiologists, and gastrointestinal physicians. So that slightly buffered solution is very compatible and very safe in the body. So what happens is our polymer collapses back to the original polymer. It's called SMA, styrene maleic acid. So that solution, it's very dilute at that point because we put in about 5 milliliters of sodium bicarbonate solution. So that gets flushed through the body and it leaves through the urethra.
Great. And I think there's a question here around the procedure, the cost of the procedure, and then, I mean, I can come out with another question, which is how's your relationship with healthcare professionals to help them really alleviate any safety concerns or provide it as an option to their patients?
Yeah, the first one around reimbursement, that's a great question. We've had an analysis done and we've already started talking to payers. So initially we will be covered under the vasectomy reimbursement code. So the doctor will be reimbursed, the patient will have some out of pocket. We will apply for our reimbursement code as soon as we have FDA approval. That's as soon as you could do it. And in my experience, it takes about 18 months. So once we get our unique code, then the patient will have nothing out of pocket as well as the doctor. And then for people who don't have insurance or don't have good insurance, we'll have a loan program. We also have a community assistance program to really help people that are, less able to pay for the procedure because we want to make this available to everyone. This is a product that can be even more beneficial to someone that has fewer resources.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing is that it's, and we talked about it, it's very rare that technology that is super powerful for people is accessible. And I think that you're doing what you can to make it accessible to everyone, actually.
Yeah, and the second part of your question was about the physicians. And I've worked on a lot of medical innovations in my career. And the medical community is by nature skeptical and slow to adopt. As we've seen, and I think you mentioned it as well, urologists and family practitioners immediately understand what we're doing and see the simplicity. They think this is the most simple procedure, and it is. We want to keep it very simple. for doctors, for patients, and everyone. So we've been really fortunate to have such great adoption by the medical community.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that definitely does alleviate a lot of the risk there. I think in terms of clinical trials, I know there's a lot of interest here in clinical trials. We had a guest here ask about participation. How do you reach out? I think you mentioned it. Love for you to reiterate that.
Yeah, so the best way would be to go on our website, and there's, I think under Contact Us, the website is planaid for men.com. And if you look under Contact Us, there's a small section where it gives you information to give us your information.
Great. I think those are the main questions. I know we went a little bit over everyone, but we really, really, really appreciate your time today. Any last questions that you want to talk to Darlene about, ask about? You know, we have a few, maybe 1 to 2 minutes left for questions that we can probably jump through. Any final questions? Let's see. Oh, someone just asked a question from an investor side. What does it cost to produce the medical device? How much will it be sold for? And what is the margin per medical device?
Those are all great questions that we're working on right now. It's similar to a vasectomy procedure in price. So in this country, that's around $700. Our margins are very healthy as a medical device. But as we ramp up, we'll get better and better information on that.
Great question. Any last questions for everyone? I don't want to hold anyone hold. Let's see. No, I think these are the main questions. Kadeem helped me out here, and really want to appreciate everyone for joining today. Really, really powerful discussion. Dr. Darlene Walley, I think you really kind of blown a lot of people's minds today, and really broke down a pretty complex technology into something that anyone can really understand. So thank you for that. I think if you're so interested in learning more about Plan A, check out the links below. There's planaformen.com. There's also their LinkedIn that you could follow and kind of see their updates. We do want to encourage everyone to attend our Impact a Billion Summit. Don't miss out on the biggest event of the year for Transform VC. If you'd like to request an invite, please go to impactabillion.com. And yeah, please do so. The summit's on October 24th. Again, this is our 5th webinar. We have more to follow. So please stay in touch. Dr. Darlene, thank you so much. Everyone on the call, thank you so much as well.
Thank you, Ahmed.